Welcome along to another BMW E39 M5 DIY how-to guide, and today we're going to be looking at doing an upgrade on the rear brakes to fit a slightly larger brake disc and an uprated caliper. Now you might be curious as to why we want to do this, but the M5 track car has got 380mm fully floating discs at the front with 8 piston calipers, and the standard rear brake discs, even with uprated brake pads, don't quite offer just enough bias towards the rear that I'd like. So we could go down the route of spending £1,200, £1,400 on a dedicated big brake kit, or we can go down the route of putting a project together using existing parts that are available off the shelf with a couple of slight modifications and making it work and going from there. This is the original BMW M5 rear brake disc. They are handed due to the vanes inside being angled. This one is off the right hand side of the car, and the standard diameter for these is 328mm with a thickness of 20mm. Now that's perfectly adequate under normal conditions, but we want something a bit bigger. So we're going to be using one of these. This is a 370mm by 24mm brake disc. It is from a BMW F07 5 Series Grand Touring with the 550 specification, so that's the 4.4 twin turbo engine. And the hubs are almost identical, so this is going to be a relatively straightforward fit with very minimal modification to the brake discs, so we can fit them. The modifications we've got to do to the F07 brake disc is quite simple, and the reason for it is the handbrake mechanism area. On the BMW brake disc, if we come down and have a look, the handbrake area doesn't protrude at all from the top of the brake disc at the back, whereas the F07 one protrudes by approximately 4mm. So we need to cut this ring down slightly to make it sit 2mm below the friction surface of the disc. And the reason for that is, if you were to put this disc straight onto the M5 hub, this would foul the backing plate where the handbrake mechanism sits. There's plenty of meat on it for the handbrake mechanism itself, so once we've cut it down we will still have the minimum of 30mm within there, which is what the handbrake shoes bite against. On the face of the disc we need to do some machining to allow the disc to be retained against the hub so it doesn't come loose when we remove the road wheel, and it's a case of putting in 2 retaining bolt holes as per the location on the M5 disc on the F07 disc, as the retaining bolt hole on the F07 is single in the wrong place compared to where the hub is. So we need to machine 2 holes in there to allow retaining nuts to go in, and we also need to machine some collets to sit inside the wheel stud holes as well, as the M5 uses M12 by 1.5 wheel bolts. The F07 uses M14 by 1.5 wheel bolts. So BMW have upgraded the size of the wheel bolts on newer vehicles. So we'll machine some collets out of aluminium and we will pop them in and hammer them home. On the vehicle you're going to need to do some slight modifications to the backing plate. The M5 backing plate as standard has a lug which sits over the brake disc to prevent stones and debris dropping down the back of it. So that lug needs to be cut off because the F07 brake disc sits higher up than this. So we do that with an angle grinder, then paint it up, make it all nice and neat. Whilst we're in here we can check our handbrake mechanism, making sure that everything is okay. There's no parts missing off the brake shoes, and everything is free to move easily. And on my car we have bi-mech wheel studs, which allows fitment of a wheel nice and easy, a lot easier than using the standard wheel bolts. As you can see on the hub, they have a returning bolt holes for the disc, so when we put the disc on now, we'll be able to secure it to the hub without any issues. In order to prepare our new brake discs for machining so we can drill out the returning bolt holes, put your old brake disc on top, make sure it's perfectly aligned with the hub and wheel nut holes. Then use a centre punch, bang in the centre of the returning bolt holes and mark on the new disc. Once you've done that, you'll be able to drill out using a 12.5mm drill. Then once we've done that, we'll use an 18mm flat bottom drill and go down a depth of approximately 2mm just to create a shoulder on the inside so our returning bolts lock the disc against the hub. Once you've machined the brake disc, this is what it should look like. So 2 extra holes. This allows our returning bolt to drop in nicely. It'll sit just below the surface and secure the brake disc to the hub. Next, we need to make the collets to go inside the stud holes, so we're going to go to the lathe and use some aluminium bar to make them. We're going to start off with some aluminium round bar. This is a piece of scrap bar that I had left over. It's roughly 24mm in diameter. We're going to drill a 12.5mm hole straight down the middle to a depth of around about 70mm. Then we're going to machine the outer diameter down to around about 16.8mm, give or take 0.1 of a millimetre. Once we've done that, we'll then use a parting tool to part off and create some 5mm collets, which we will then insert into the brake disc. For drilling the centre bore of the aluminium bar, we want the lathe on nice low speed with plenty of torque, and roughly spindle speed will be around about 50 to 60 RPM, and we just feed in the drill bit nice and slowly and allow it to cut through without it chattering or binding. Once we've drilled out our centre bore, we can increase the machine speed so we can turn down the outer diameter of our bar stock. We'll take some roughing cuts first, then we'll drop it down to around about 17mm, maybe 17.2 overall diameter. Then we'll take a final cut to bring it down to a final diameter of 16.8mm. Now we've got our overall diameter down to what we need, we can start cutting the collets off into little 5mm wide pieces, and to do that we set our parting off tool so the back face is flush with the machined face of the piece of alloy. Then we wind on 5mm on our dial gauge for our compound slide, and then we put our machine on, lower the speed, then slowly winding the parting tool to allow it to cut through. Have a piece of rodding or something insert down the middle so you can catch each collet as it comes out. Once you machine the collets, we'll just pop them back in lathe and clean up any burrs on the bored hole. Then we'll run a drill back through them as well, just to ensure that the internal surfaces are spotless, ready for mounting into the brake disc. Once your collets are completed, you're going to need 10 in total. We're going to send them home into the brake disc. So we just put it on the top, around the hole, because it's got a slight chamfer on it already. Piece of sacrificial material on top of it. Then just send it home until it's nice and flush with the brake disc. Do that for all 5. Once that's done, we can see on the back there's around about 2mm between the rear surface of the disc where it mates to the hub and the collet itself. Because I've fitted Bimex studs on my vehicle, they've got a slight lip, so I needed that little bit of space in order to clear them. If you just use the normal BMW wheel bolts, then there's no need to leave that space there. On the back of the brake disc, we've now machined it so we have the handbrake mechanism area without the lip protruding out from the top of the rear of the brake disc. This allows the brake disc to sit flush against the hub once we mount it onto the vehicle. Once you're happy, you can then test fit the disc onto the hub, slide it over, then you can insert the locking retaining bolts to test to make sure that they're fitting perfect. So that's the brake disc now secured to the hub, perfectly centralised. The centre bore for the brake disc is 75mm on the F07, which is the same as the M5 because they share the same hub diameter of 74mm. Then round the back we can see the brake disc location against the backing plate there, and we've still got plenty of room for mounting our brake caliper. For the brake calipers, we're going to be using Porsche 996 front brake calipers. These are manufactured by Brembo. They are radial mounted, so we can make our own brackets, and the 996 and various other Porsches which these are fitted to take a 24mm wide front disc as standard. So that's the perfect width for our rear brake disc, because our new brake disc is 24mm. You do need to do some machining on the inside to allow the larger brake disc to fully fit inside the caliper, and we're only talking taking a couple of millimetres off. Then it allows the full pad contacts against the brake disc. When mounting our brake disc back onto the hub so we can make our caliper brackets, we need to make sure everything's aligned correctly, and it's imperative that the brake disc is secured firmly to the hub, so make sure that the mating faces are clean. Then secure the brake disc using your wheel nuts or wheel studs and a couple of protective washers behind each nut to ensure that it's firmly clamped against the hub, and this will allow the caliper to be centralised, ready for marking out the bracket for the holes to be drilled. For our caliper brackets, we're going to be making our own using some 5mm thick 50x50 angle iron. So you'll need to mount your angle iron onto the hub, drill holes accordingly once you've mounted it in the correct place, and to do that you'll need the brake disc on and the caliper in place, then line it up and hold it in position. Mark the angle iron for drilling using the hub holes as a template, then mount it to the hub. We've scored using a scribe on various parts of the angle iron so we can trim it down to suit and remove a bit of weight out of it whilst keeping strength. Next we're going to remount the brake disc back onto the hub, put the caliper on, mark on the angle iron where the caliper bolt holes are going to go, then drill through for them as well. To mark out for the caliper mounting bolts onto the bracket, hold the caliper in place, ensuring that the brake pad contact surface is correct. Then use a blacksmith's drill bit, 11.5mm or 12mm, through the caliper mounting bolt hole, and then use a hammer to mark the angle iron, and this will give you a centre punch mark in the correct place to allow you to drill the holes in the correct position. Now we've drilled the holes for the radial mounts and trimmed the angle iron to suit the profile of the caliper and allow the back plate to fit correctly as well, we'll put the brake disc back on, then we'll test fit the caliper, make sure everything's okay, and if that's all good we'll do the same for the other side of the car. Then fit the brake lines and bleed the brakes up as per normal brake bleeding procedure. Once you get your wheel back on, give it a full rotation and make sure that everything is fine, that there's no catching of any of the components which we've now fitted. And then take your car for a steady drive to bed your brakes in. So that's the installation process if you want to save yourself a few quid on buying a big brake kit. Hope it's been of some use for you. Obviously it's a bit more in depth than the normal videos because you need a lathe and a bench press drill in order to be able to do this job. But if you've got those or access to those, then great. So if you want to subscribe to my channel, please do. Keep an eye out for more videos in the future, and keep an eye out for the track car build video, which will be going through various bits of what we've done to the M5 to get it to where it is. So give this video a like if you found it useful, and I'll see you again in the future. Thank you.